You know, for over 2 decades, we've all thought of The Matrix as the ultimate sci-fi story about humans fighting machines. But what if that's just the cover story? What if the film's real secret is actually a deep, philosophical takedown of our own social reality? Let's get into it because the Wachowskis muffed a giant clue hidden in plain sight, one that completely reframes the entire story.
Okay, so early in the movie, Neo pulls out his illegal software from a book he's hollowed out. Well, that book isn't just a random prop. It's basically the Rosetta Stone for the whole film. It's a real book called Simulacra and Simulation by Jean Baudrillard, and it's our way into understanding what the Matrix really is.
Now listen really closely to how Morpheus defines the enemy. He doesn't say it's AI or robots. He doesn't even say it's software. He calls it a system. This isn't just a cool line of dialogue. It's the movie's entire thesis. The Matrix isn't some computer code. It's the invisible social structure we all live inside.
And that, right there, is the heart of this whole thing. The movie is basically a manifesto against all the invisible man-made rules that build our reality. This story isn't about a war with machines. It's about the fight to first see and then rewrite the social programming we're all born into.
To really get our heads around this, we have to talk about the philosopher who wrote that book, Jean Baudrillard. His ideas are the absolute foundation of the film, especially his concepts of simulation and, even more important, simulacra. Let's make sure we get this difference because it's everything. A simulation, like a flight simulator, is a copy that still points to a real thing, a real airplane. But a simulacrum, that's a copy of something that never really existed in the first place. A perfect example is Main Street USA at Disneyland. It feels real, but it's a copy of an idealized, nostalgic America that was never actually there. It's a copy with no original. Baudrillard said our whole culture has moved through these 4 stages. First, images were just faithful copies of reality. Simple. Then, they started to distort reality. But here's where it gets wild. In stage 3, the image pretends there's a reality behind it, even when there's not. And finally, stage 4, where Baudrillard says we are right now, is the pure simulacrum, a world where our signs and images have totally replaced reality itself. This 4th stage is what he called hyperreality. It's a world where the model of reality, the map, has actually become more important than the real thing, the territory. We don't really experience the world anymore, we experience a simulation of it.
And that iconic line from Morpheus, turns out, it's not even from the movie originally. He's quoting Baudrillard's book word for word. And it's the perfect description of that barren, empty feeling of actual reality once he pulled back the curtain on the hyper-real simulation we're all living in.
Okay, so if the Matrix is a social simulation, how does it keep us all plugged in? For that, we need to bring in 2 other major thinkers, the sociologists Pierre Bourdieu and Michel Foucault. Their ideas are going to show us exactly how the walls of this prison are built. Bourdieu gave us this idea called habitus. The best way to think of it is like society's operating system, but it's installed directly into our minds. It's that gut feeling that makes all these arbitrary social rules, you know, like what's professional, what's normal, what's cool, feel completely natural and obvious, when really, they're just man-made ideas. Now listen to Morpheus's description of the Matrix again. He doesn't mention pods or computer code. He talks about the day-to-day rituals of our society, going to work, to church, paying taxes. He is perfectly describing the invisible internalized rules of habitus. That is the source code of the social matrix. Then you've got Michel Foucault, who adds this other critical piece. He said that modern power doesn't just hold us down, it actually creates us. Through systems of constant invisible surveillance, what he called a panopticon, we learn to police ourselves. We become docile bodies, people who follow the rules even when we think nobody's watching. And the film gives us perfect characters to represent these types of control. The agents? They're the obvious, repressive power of the state, the cops. The architect is that cold, structural power of pure logic that designs the system. And the oracle? She's got that subtle, psychological power, the one that manages our beliefs, our choices, our very sense of who we are. And the system needs both of them to work. The architect builds this rigid, perfect structure, but he can't account for messy human nature. So the oracle is his solution. Her job is to unbalance his perfect equation. She manages rebellion by giving people the illusion of choice, which ironically makes the whole system that much stronger. It's a brilliant machine of social control. But this all brings us to the deepest, most personal part of the entire allegory. Because all this heavy philosophy, the simulacra, the social control, it was all pointing toward a very personal truth.
that the filmmakers themselves confirmed.
What's so important to know here is that this is not just some fan theory. Director Lily Wachowski has been very open that, for them, the movie was always an allegory for the transgender experience. And knowing that, it changes everything. That splinter in your mind that Morpheus talks about, it's a perfect metaphor for gender dysphoria. It's that deep, nagging, unshakable feeling that the identity the world has assigned to you, the one the system says you are, is a complete facade. It's a simulacrum.
When you see it that way, taking the red pill isn't just about waking up to a war. It becomes this profound, radical act of self-definition. It's about choosing to embrace your authentic identity, even when a binary social system is demanding you stay in your box. Just another copper-top battery for the machine.
So let's pull all these threads together. When you start to see the Matrix not as a computer program, but as a social construct, Neo's whole journey becomes this incredible roadmap for real-world liberation. All of Neo's superpowers start to look a lot less like sci-fi magic and a lot more like symbols. Stopping bullets? That's not about being fast. It's about realizing the so-called laws of the system are just made-up rules, and you can refuse to follow them. Seeing the code is about understanding the hidden structures that shape our reality. And flying? Well, that's what it looks like to transcend the system's limitations completely. Maybe the best way to wrap your head around this entire idea is with an analogy. Imagine our social reality is like a giant dictionary where every single word is only defined by other words inside the same book. There's no outside reality to check it against. True freedom, then, isn't about escaping the dictionary. It's about realizing you can stop just being a reader and instead become the one who decides what the words mean. Which, of course, leaves us with one last big question. Once you realize that the world is running on a script, just a collection of man-made rules and ideas, you have to ask yourself, who's writing it? And more importantly, what's stopping you from picking up the pen?